Andy, you and I are really excited still because every time you go through something like this, call it a downturn in the market, call it a recession, whatever we call it, right? Usually there's opportunities to come from that. Hey, welcome back to the Amazing Freedom Podcast. Andy, we're in a little bit of shaky times here as we're recording this. It's really been all year, but definitely heading into May, June, inflation, rising interest rates, all of that is, I think, spilling over from the kind of general market into the Amazon space, because I do feel like I'm seeing more posts on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever across the board now. Cryptocurrency is getting hit hard, right? The stock market's hit hard. And inevitably, this leads to everybody in every industry basically asking, what does this mean for us? And so, not that we have all the answers and that we know it, but we ourselves in our own business are basically asking ourselves these same questions and trying to plan ahead. And I know during these times, there can be all kinds of craziness that can go through your head. Andy, you and I are really excited still because I think every time you go through something like this, call it a downturn in the market, call it a recession, that probably will be announced in early July once the quarterly stats go out, whatever we call it, right? Usually there's opportunities to come from that. So today we want to talk about 10 ways to make millions in a shaky market. And hopefully the timing is apt, and we'll see, maybe we'll call it a prediction type thing too. We'll see how accurate we are in a year from now.
What was that movie? The phrase, Chicken Little, right? He's running around, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And it's such a self-fulfilling prophecy. When everyone is saying the sky is falling, then everybody begins to pull back, right? Now, there are some legitimate inflationary actions that are happening out there, right? With gasoline prices, some food prices. Overall, though, it's like 8 to 10%. It is not, I don't think, a need to, be broadcasting the sky is falling. But like you said, when that happens and people begin to pull back, and like we're seeing right now, the stock market is going down, then for folks that are smart and have some good business sense, that's the opportunity, right? Where you can then go in and create what I think could be generational wealth. So I'm excited to get into these today. You really have to be in the right position. So hopefully our listeners are in the right position. And it really comes down to, I believe, risk tolerance and boldness. Even though the times, right, and potentially we don't know where this is going to go. They could get really hard. When you look at it from historical perspective, I don't care how hard they are going to get. It cannot compare to the trials and tribulations that folks went through 100 years ago. I remember just recently seeing a picture of coal miners. This was like the early 1900s. And there was about 100 of them stuffed in this tiny little coal mine elevator that would go down, into the earth like a half a mile. I mean, it looked like they barely had enough room to breathe. And that's what they were doing, right, to feed their families. And so, historically, when you look back to past generations and the amount of effort and work, right, and trial they had to go through, whatever we're facing right now, whatever we're going to get into, I don't think, I could be wrong, Nate, it's going to compare to what folks generations before us had to go through. And so, I really think it comes down to mindset, and I'm glad that we're going to hit these 10 things today that folks don't pull back. They don't, get fearful. Now, as Warren Buffett says, when there's blood in the streets, right, that's the time to pounce.
Yeah, that's why I said it's a little bit of a prediction episode. Just to let you in onto the personalities of Andy and I more, I'm kind of always a little bit more of the bear market pessimist, or whatever you want to call it, and Andy's optimist. And I think that's why we've worked well for the last 8 years as partners, because we balance each other out at different times. So I'm always maybe a little bit more on the Chicken Little side, and Andy's on the the bullish side, driving us forward, and it's worked well. And what I'm excited about in this episode, when we go through these 10 ways, is that irrespective of what actually happens, we know that eventually there's going to be some type of pullback, and and all signs are showing that that's, kind of happening a little bit now. I think that our listeners, people who are part of Amazing Freedom and are hustlers that go out and have that entrepreneur spirit, this is when you can make millions during this type of year. this type of environment that we're going into, because while most people are kind of dazed and not sure what's happening, this is when, like you just said, Andy, you can pounce. You can be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. And you can kind of have that philosophy, not just to investments, but to business in general, which is what we kind of live out each day. We're definitely more in the business day-to-day realm still at this point of our careers than on the investment side. So we're looking at, how does this actually apply as Amazon sellers? So, all right, these 10 ways to make millions in a shaky market. Number one, I would say, based on everything I've seen in the past, would be monetize arbitrage opportunities. So we've been doing this for the past 10 years basically now, but I think during times that get shaky, this is when you can monetize arbitrage opportunities even more, because you can go out and really hustle for your arbitrage and make profit there. And a lot of times it's because it's kind of the more hard, dirty work, right, Andy? Like to go in to a retail store or a thrift store like we did originally and do literal arbitrage in that sense. I mean, it's hard work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But our partner, who now works with us, Steve Peterson, he's really a master at this. And just 2 weeks ago, he went to a auction. He found it on Facebook, and he bought some vintage Star Wars products. And he made his money back before he left the auction site. So he listed a few on eBay, and before he got into his car, they had sold, and he made the entire amount back. I think it was close to $1,000 that he had purchased this huge lot, right, of these Star Wars figures. So yeah, when you're smart like that, there's opportunity out there.
So number one, if you haven't really yet, and this could apply to anyone in any space, I think you can start looking even more to monetize arbitrage opportunities. And we continue to do this whenever we get the chance. Number two, reduce debt aggressively. Now, we're not like Dave Ramsey's here trying to say that all debt is bad. However, we've been pretty open about this in our brand. That's an eight-figure brand at this point. We have never had any debt with this brand. And so we're not saying this is the best way to do it, the only way to do it, or even the best way to do it. But for us, we kind of had said from the beginning, we didn't want to go take out big loans for our brand. We wanted to grow kind of organically, which probably reduced our growth in the past 4 years. I would say, Andy, I don't know how you feel. Like it probably hindered some of our growth early on, but now I'm thankful that we don't have this debt that sometimes can be hard to get out of. Andy, I know you've had debt in the past that you're very open about. It's just kind of about really buckling down and getting aggressive. I don't know if you have any points to add of how you did it.
Yeah, no, my favorite line is in debt, stressed out, and discontent. And that's a lot of times what debt can do to you. So you want to do whatever you can, double down, eat out less, right? Figure out how to cook your meals at home. Don't go to Starbucks, and I know that probably sounds silly, but it adds up over time. You want to be able to reduce that debt as aggressively as you can.
Not to preach on it, but like debt, I feel like if you have it, now's the time to look at any way that you can reduce that. And usually it is by increasing your income or reducing your expenses. It's best to do both, I think, as much as you can. But sometimes in the short term, it's easier to reduce expenses a little bit, at least in the short term, to get some immediate traction there. Might want to look at that. Number three, the lazy, the lucky, and the overextended will be filtered out, which is good news for you, right? If you are not lazy, if you are maybe not unlucky, but you're not just all luck, right? You have some skill that's gotten you to where you're at, and you're not overextended. So going back to that number two, debt kind of bubbled up. Those people will likely be filtered out. And you know what? I think we've seen this in Shopify in the last year. So most of our business is on Amazon, but we do have about 15% of our sales, 10 to 15, go through Shopify. In the last year, for a number of reasons, but Facebook and Google ads have gotten really expensive. Apple's changes had something to do with that, with their privacy, but also you had all this VC backed money that was going into the D2C space, and it was driving up the ad costs. That was off Amazon. On Amazon, you had all these aggregators enter the Amazon space, and they were driving up Amazon PPC costs, right? In my mind, some of those people were a little bit overextended. We'll see, how that shakes out. But some of those things got driven up. So as they get filtered out, potentially, if they don't make it, that could bring some of those costs back down, which, who knows how that will go. But as some of those people get filtered out, those who aren't lazy, those who aren't just lucky, and those who aren't overextended might be able to capitalize on kind of a reset in some of those lucky people getting filtered out. Number 4, there is strength in numbers. So, Andy, you've preached this a lot more than I have in the past, but maybe just talk to having that kind of network of close companions that you go to during both the ups and the downs of your business journey.
Yeah, we often talk about one of my closest friends, Amazon seller, is Dan Wentworth, and he really is an optimist. He's been selling now online full time for 20 years. Originally started out on eBay, now he's all Amazon. But so encouraging to talk to him. He always says, every year they end up having a new bestseller, and so because his team is really good at having their antennas out there, looking for more potential products, they always end up finding another bestseller that replaces, some of the products they had in the past. And so going back to that mindset, again, you have to understand that some products are going to have a shelf life. You're not going to be able to sell them forever, and always be looking kind of for the next opportunity. And if you're able to do that, just like Dan, then that's kind of how you win. And so, again, staying close to him, super encouraging, as well as a few other sellers that we know, because they are able to encourage you, right? When your bestseller suddenly, starts to drop, you have to have that mindset. You know what? This may be dropping. That's okay. The market has been around since the beginning of time. We just have to be able to find the next product.
And sometimes it's stuff you already know. You just need someone else to tell it to you, right? Like you need that encouragement from someone else. So having that strength in numbers, your tribe. We talk a lot about the Amazon seller tribe and having over $100 million sellers. There's strength in those numbers. There's something about seeing other people doing it and kind of believing in that encouragement that matters. Number 5, cut the fat. So this kind of goes along with what we were already talking about. But if you have built up different levels of quote unquote fat in your business where you are just really haven't been watching your financials. Maybe people listening don't run any kind of monthly financial report, right? And when you're getting started, I know that's kind of hard, but as you do grow and build up, I think a lot of people get all the way past the $1 million annual sales mark and they're still not really paying close attention to their financials. So that's kind of a topic on its own. But what usually happens then is you're not realizing that there's some expenses creeping in that you just really don't need. So just look at that, evaluate it, and see, hey, do you really need every single thing that's here?
And some of those decisions can be extremely difficult. I think last year I had to make one of the most difficult decisions in our business. We had hired a really close friend of mine, who I knew since he was really young. He was a younger employee, and we kind of came to the point in our business where we knew for the next 3 or 4 months we weren't going to have a lot for him to do. And so, unfortunately, I had to let him go. It was extremely heart wrenching, super hard, right, to do. But in business, sometimes you have to make those type of decisions, and you have to make those cuts in order, to be profitable.
Yeah, not fun, but sometimes making those hard decisions is what could separate you from the competitor who, or the other person who's not willing to do that. And sometimes you just got to do it to ride it out and then thrive again at some point. Number 6, create your mission to Mars. So this is borrowing from, Elon Musk, SpaceX. They have this mission to Mars that no matter how good or how bad things get, they always have this North Star goal they're looking at. Some people call it creating your why. But you hear a lot about this during good times. You really don't need that much of a mission to Mars because it's kind of like, hey, everything's good. But during the bad times and you're wanting to give up, that's when you really need this main thing you're pointing to, right, Andy?
Yeah, I love this one. This is probably my favorite out of all 10 of them. And recently, my family and I, we sat down together, my wife and my 2 children, and I basically laid out for them our mission to Mars. It's regarding our brand, and what I said is, look, I need your help as a family as we grow this brand. We want to get it to 100 million. And so there are sacrifices that you may have to make if you're with me on this. And thankfully they were all with me. And I said, you know what, guys, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. our goal is to get to 100 million, but if we go to zero, I'm going to be okay because I have you with me. I tell my wife this all the time. Thank you so much for allowing me to risk and kind of go for it. At the end of the day, if we lose everything, if we lose our house, if we have to live, in a tiny apartment, as long as I can be with you right next to me, laying next to each other on the bed, I'm going to be okay. Life is short, but let's create, right, this great mission, as a family, and let's go for it. And so for me, that was really relevant. We just did that like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I'm telling you, there's something powerful, as a family when you all commit, and then after we said that, we all prayed together. When you all commit to something and you're kind of in unity and on the same page, there is a synergy and a power there that you can't really replicate anywhere else, right?
And it sounds kind of like your mission to Mars is the brand, but then at a bigger picture, it's really your family, right? And that might be, beyond that, it's like, hey, what is this unity? And at the end of the day, it's all for the family. And so kind of sounds cliche in a way, but I think a lot of people maybe haven't verbalized or written it down, internalized what is going, even during bad times, why am I going to work hard for the next 10 years, whatever it is, right? To get through it all. Like what does it mean? So that's number 6. Yeah, I like that one. Number 7, find your seller network. So this is very similar to number 4, strength in numbers, but specifically you need your seller network. And this is going to be those experts, the mentors, the people that you look to when you are going through something, right? And I think it's good to have advisors or mentors in lots of areas in life, but on this, we're specifically talking about selling on Amazon, right? So, and you already mentioned one of yours was Dan, right? So I think that's strength in numbers, having like a big group, but then specifically your seller network includes Dan, Steve, right? So having those people that you can point to and ask those tough questions of.
Yeah, the phrase is your network is your net worth. And, that's, you really want to have a strong network with whatever niche you're in.
Yeah. Number 8, double down on training. So I think I heard this recently. It's when things are good, like they kind of have been the last couple of years, you don't differentiate between those who have been training themselves in their skills and not. And let me give an example from what we talked about, I think just last week on the pod. In 2020, someone could come and launch on Amazon a very saturated product like a salad spinner or one of those barbecue gloves or something, and it was selling well because there was so much demand in the last 2 years in e-commerce that you really didn't see who was good at picking products and who was not good at picking products. And we talk a lot on this podcast about product selection is 85% of success. Well, it kind of seemed like the last 2 years, maybe that wasn't true. Maybe product selection was only 30% of success or something because you could kind of throw anything against the wall. Well, those who were working hard on their skills, who were listening to podcasts and doing courses and training and spending time in the Amazon catalog the last 2 years, maybe you didn't get rewarded in that time period, but I believe in the next 2 to 3 years, you will be rewarded for that time. And if you haven't been doing that, now's the time, I think, to double down on your training, invest in your own skills. Investing in your own skills. The way I try to look at it is anytime I learn something new, it doesn't matter what happens in the economy or Amazon or the market. Nothing's taking away, even if taxes go up super high, you can't tax a skill, right? So like learning skills and growing is kind of recession proof. So that's something I think if you double down on, can serve you for the long term.
And, I'm excited about the team we work with. I know you, Nate, Abs. We're always sending each other, hey, check out this YouTube video, that we just watched. And it's always folks that are in our industry or just have some tremendous business advice. What a great time in history we're living in, where you can actually watch some of the best minds in the world, instantly through YouTube. A day should not go by, right, where you are and not learn something new.
Yeah, 100%. Number 9, become more agile. So this one's interesting and it's tricky. As you grow, you basically by default become less agile. So, during these times, it's what are you going to do every quarter, every year to be agile when things get shaky and more crazy, the quicker you can turn your ship and move, the better. And, it's interesting when you're in a bull market like we've kind of been for the last 10 plus years, you get these big companies that get massive and massive and massive, and they kind of dominate everything, like Amazon has, really, right? And then when things get shaky, sometimes they're so slow they can't move fast. Where this is why I'm really excited as we kind of lead off these 10 is I still feel like we're very agile. We make decisions sometimes where we'll completely change, or we'll get into a brand new category and we'll literally launch a couple products in a month. Last year at one period, we launched over 12 new SKUs in a new niche in a 2-month period, right? So that's something that big companies a lot of times can't do. So you want to be more agile. Now, a lot of times that means everything we've already talked about, reducing some of your fat, reducing your debt, making sure that you don't have a lot of unneeded overhead so that you can turn very, very quickly. And so becoming more agile is important as we get into shaky territory, in my opinion. Number 10, make end of week, end of day. So this is kind of like ending with an urgency. A lot of times, I think we're a little bit slow on stuff. So I really like kind of the mantra: if your default in your business is to get something done by the end of the week or the next week, maybe flip that on its head to be, hey, the new default time to get something done is end of day. A lot of us have maybe gotten a little complacent on things. So instead of saying, hey, how fast can you get this new listing image turned around for me? And if it's like, oh yeah, we'll get that by the end of the week, maybe now it's, hey, this is the new default is end of day. Get a little bit of urgency going on as other people aren't as urgent.
I had to start about this on the spot, and it's probably not grammatically correct. Be a procrastination
uh,
assassination.
you could
That don't
you could
make sense,
trademark that
but
one. Procrastination assassination. Yeah, procrastination definitely starts to reveal itself when the tides are not always rising, right? So, hey, these are 10 ways to make millions in a shaky market. These are, I think, applicable really to any industry. And not that we know it all, but these are literally things that we're talking about ourselves, Andy and I, in our own business. How can we do this in our brand? These 10 things. And so we do our best not to come on here and talk theoretically about things that we heard other people say, or that might make sense to someone but not to us. These are what we feel like we're going to do in our brand, these 10 things, and aggressively really for the rest of this year, no matter what the market or Amazon selling looks like. I think these are 10 things that are going to serve us well. And as they change, we'll bring them back to the podcast and let you know how some of them shake out. All right, guys, hopefully those 10 things help. If you haven't yet, make sure you sign up to be an Amazing Freedom Insider. You can go to amazingfreedom.com, sign up for that. Our latest magazine issue is out, featuring John Cleater. John's a great example of someone who hustled. He was a Taco Bell manager at one point in his early career. Now I think he did 7-8 million last year. These 10 things we just talked about, John has done that. I believe, looking at him and knowing his story from the beginning of his selling career, he's been really good at this. Check that out and make sure you subscribe to The Insider to get our weekly newsletter. We're getting better and better, I believe, every week at that. All right, guys, thanks. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Amazing Freedom Podcast.